Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Conversations with Lothrop. This is a very special program because it is our 70th such, and we're very pleased that we've been able to go on so long with this series and that you have been faithful listeners. So welcome to this 70th edition of Conversations with Lothrop. Our guest today is the Reverend Father Brian Wilbert, Rector of Christ Church. We're so delighted that you're here.
It's good to be here.
Let me say just a bit about him. He's a native of Illyria, which I understand is a town to the northeast of us, about 9 miles. Graduate of Illyria High School. He has his Bachelor of Arts degree from Kenyon College, and his Master of Divinity from Bexley Hall, Colgate Rochester Theological Seminary. And he has just received his Doctor of Ministry degree from the Seabury Western Seminary in Evanston, Illinois. So we're having now to treat him with more respect than we did earlier. He previously has served as curate of St. Michael's in the Hills, Toledo. And then he was for 8 years rector of Grace Church in Ravenna. And he came to Christ Church Oberlin in 1996. Let me ask you first, you went to Kenyon.
I did.
Tell us about that. How did you happen to do that?
Well, I went to Kenyon College because Kenyon was founded by the first Episcopal Bishop of Ohio, Philander Chase, and is an Episcopal institution. And since I grew up in the Episcopal Church, had a lot of opportunity to hear about Kenyon, and in fact the young man who was the curate at St. Andrew's Church when I was a teenager was a graduate of Kenyon, as was the rector. Mm-hmm. So when it came time to think about colleges, the curate asked me, have you ever thought about Kenyon? And I had, of course, given some thought to it, but it was
Mm-hmm.
nice to have a personal connection. Mm-hmm. So over Thanksgiving break, he loaded a bunch of us up in his car and drove us down there, and the rest is history.
There you are. Now you're a distinguished alumnus.
Now I'm a
distinguished alumnus.
Interestingly enough, Kenyon was the only school that I applied to. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to go there, and I thought if I don't go to Kenyon, I don't know if I want to go anywhere else. So I kind of put all my eggs in one basket. But it was a great choice. I really enjoyed the 4 years there.
And was it while you were at Kenyon that you decided you wanted to be a priest?
Actually, I had thought about going into the priesthood again when I was a teenager, and primarily because of the role models, the clerics who were role models mm-hmm. in my life. Mm-hmm. And in particular, Russell Hargate, who was the rector when I was a child mm-hmm. at St. Andrews, and then Rod Pierce, who was the rector when I was a teenager mm-hmm. through my early adult years, and Carl Ratand, who was the curate that I spoke of earlier. Mm-hmm. And I had talked about that possibility with Carl and with Dr. Pierce, and they both gave me what I thought to be incredibly sage advice, and that was put it on the back burner, go to college, don't major in religion, mm-hmm. Get a degree in something, get a liberal arts degree, and then when you're a senior, come back and talk to us mm-hmm. again.
And what was your major?
Music, as a matter of fact. Which caused a little bit of consternation with my mom and dad. They decided if I was going to be a music major that I really should go to Oberlin, but I really wanted to go to Kenyon, so that's where I ended up getting my degree from. And it's a Bachelor of Arts degree, liberal arts education with an emphasis in music. Mm-hmm. The major is in music, but like most liberal arts colleges, you take more classes outside of your major area than inside your major area. So
this reminds me that I neglected in my introduction to say that I am sitting here today with a very fine violinist who performs quite regularly at services and at other times as well. And do you have a piano also?
Only hymns in the key of D major. That's what I limit on the piano, is I can play hymns in the key of D major.
Let's see. Why don't you tell us about how you happened to come to Oberlin?
Well, I received a phone call that the church in Oberlin was receiving names for a new rector, and I thought about, prayed about that possibility, and knew something about the parish before I arrived, because I, of course, as you indicated, I grew up in Ohio, and I grew up not far from here. So
And had you ever been to a service here before then?
I had been a couple of times. I had come to an ordination service once with Rod Pierce back in 1981 or 82, I think. And then when I would go on vacation and come back and stay with my parents, if I didn't go to St. Andrew's Elyria, I came up to Christ Church to go to church on Sunday mornings. So I added my name to the 80-some other names that had been put in the hat, and it was a fascinating process to get here, but very clearly a wonderful process, a very well thought through, well prayed over, I'm sure, process, and I think it's been a good match. I've been here, as you said, just about 6 years now, and I'm still pinching myself. You know, I'm still can't believe I'm in Oberlin with all this wonderfulness around me, and also so close to my family, which most of which still lives in Elyria.
So we hope the next 36 years or whatever it is will just be just as exciting.
Well, I'd have to break Father Daniel's record. I don't know that I'd.
25 years,
I don't know that I'd live that long, but
I may not be around 36 years from now, but I'm sure whoever is interviewing you then, and whatever the media is, saying, tell us about your 40th anniversary at Christ Church, we'll have something good to say. Let me ask this. Is it about what you thought it would be? Were there surprises? Oberlin being Oberlin?
Oberlin being Oberlin? No, it's not. I don't think there were any surprises at all. You know, whenever you go someplace, I've only been in 2 other cures, but whenever you arrive, there's always kind of a settling in period of time. And you know, it took 2 or 3 years to kind of get settled in and into a routine. And you know, I'm sizing up the congregation, and the people in the parish are sizing me up, and we're all learning each other's quirks and idiosyncrasies, and learning what it is to be family together, and how to work together. Most importantly, I think so.
Is there a positive thing in your mind? Because there must be some difficulties too, and challenges. Not say difficult, challenges. At servicing a church in a town that is multicultural the way Oberlin is. Not only college, but diverse population.
Right. We the amazing thing is that one of the things I've discovered since I've been here is that Oberlin is still the parish in Oberlin, Christ Church in Oberlin, still has it's still got a college town feel about it. But roughly a third of our membership comes from outside of Oberlin, drives in from Oberlin from some very far away places, Sandusky, Milan, Vermilion, Westlake, North Ridgeville, and a few from Lorraine and Elyria. So we aren't wholly centered as being just a college parish anymore. We do have a number of members of the parish, roughly again about a third, who are either faculty, staff, or students at the college. And then there's just a third of people that are just town folk that live in Oberlin and might work elsewhere, but or people that have retired. Big contingency from Kendall at Oberlin of Episcopalians who are now attending Christ Church Oberlin. In fact, I've often thought about making Kendall a satellite mission for the Episcopal Church. There's so many good Episcopalians up there.
Speaking of students, is there a special outreach for them?
There has
challenge as well.
There is a challenge. When I first started coming to Oberlin, and this is something I've just noticed within the last 6 years, when I first started coming to Oberlin, we had a wonderful ministry, which was also very time-intensive, called the Student Lunch Ministry, and that happened on Tuesday at noon. Anybody from the college, any of the students from the college could come and have lunch at the rectory. And for the first year, I prepared all the lunches. But that took up most of Tuesday morning. And
how many students came?
We would have good crowds, 20, 25. Plus, we also had some members of the parish who were on faculty or members of the staff would also show up as a way of kind of interacting with the student body and the other members of the parish. It's a good way to find out who on the faculty and the staff are also members of the congregation as well. And that ministry lasted about 3 years, first 3 years that I was here, and then the student population changed a little bit. Tuesday was no longer a good day, and so it kind of just quietly stopped happening. The thing I started to say before is that when I first arrived at Oberlin, I was given a little packet of cards from the chaplain's office at the college, and they were religious preference cards in which the students would indicate that they either belonged to or they had some experience with a particular denomination. And because I'm the local Episcopal rector, the rector of all Oberlin is the wonderful phrase that we use, I would get the stack of cards of young people who were Episcopalian. The change that has occurred in 6 years is that many young people, long before they even arrive in their college years, begin to do exploration of other kinds of religion or other kinds of faith. And so instead of sorting the cards out by whether a person belongs to the United Church of Christ or the Roman Catholic Church or the Lutheran Church or the Episcopal Church, the biggest stack that I think they're getting in the chaplain's office is a stack of cards where the students claim to be spiritual. They don't claim identity with a religious denomination or a particular faith. They claim to be a person of spirituality. And so the challenge for us, and this is something that the national church, the National Episcopal Church, has started to kind of take on as a mission imperative, is how to reach people, young people on college campuses who are exploring what component spirituality has in their total lives, which is really a very exciting thing. In the Diocese of Ohio, that's gotten translated in full-time chaplaincy at Kenyon College. As a matter of fact, the college hired, or the diocese hired, a young person just out of seminary to go and be a chaplain at Kenyon College for a couple of years to get some experience, but also to be the contact person for the students there. So could something like that happen at Oberlin? Absolutely. Could we apply to the diocese and say that we think that the field is fertile at Oberlin College for attracting young people into the Episcopal Church? Absolutely. And that may be one of the things that we explore in the future.
Do you work with the college chaplains?
I work with the college chaplains mostly through the organization in town, which you know as Oberlin Area Cooperating Ministries. And that seems to be the wonderful thing about OACM, of course, is that it's not just clergy. It's clergy and lay people from all the different churches in town who gather together once a month. And our meetings primarily are a time of sharing what's going on around town in our different denominations. And that's where we have some contact with the chaplain's office. That's where we have most contact with the chaplain's office. And I still go around every Move-In Madness Day to visit with the students that I know are Episcopalian. Frequently, clergy from a student's home parish will write and tell me that his or her student is coming to Oberlin, and would I pay them a visit? And so the day the students are moving in, I take one of my dogs, either my Dachshund or my little Jack Russell Terrier, which I find to be very inviting additions to have with me when I'm making my way around the campus. And we go in and visit with the students and their parents as they're moving in, just to let them know that Christ Church is here in town and they're welcome to attend. And we average on Sunday morning probably somewhere between 12 and 15 students, depending on the time of the year. The closer it gets to exams, the fewer students we see. But the students are welcome, and they will frequently participate fully in the life of the parish family, from just showing up on Sunday for worship to taking on leadership roles in the congregation as well.
And I do know there's a national trend now for students to go less to church than
Right.
they used to.
Right.
And anything we can do to
That's right.
reverse that is great. Here's a thought question for you. recent reports in the press have indicated that certain of the major denominations, Episcopalian was one, Congregationalists, Lutherans, lesser but still pronounced, the same thing with Methodists, a loss, continuing loss year after year of, and they seem at the same time to reflect these figures that there is an increase in the more conservative church membership. And I imagine there are many reasons for this, but I wondered, I wanted to give you a quotation and see if you thought it had anything to do with this. An Episcopal priest from out of state was quoted to me recently as saying that the reasons that many churches, including the Episcopal, are losing members is that social agendas have taken over from religious agendas. Would you care to tackle that one?
I would be happy to tackle that one. Absolutely. The first thing I'd like to say with regard to that is I'd like to know where the newspaper got their figures from. In fact, the membership in the National Episcopal Church is actually up this year from prior years.
Well, these were through 2000.
I think, yeah.
I think maybe.
That would be true. I think that
was.
Yeah, that would be true. And there was actually, that trend actually started, Richard, as you probably are aware, in the 1960s, with people leaving organized religion in droves. In the Episcopal Church, we had some things happen that kind of accelerated that. I think one of them was the ordination of women that happened more than 25 years ago. The other was the revision of a prayer book that happened in 1977. And since that time, the membership of the church has kind of evened out, and it has fluctuated depending on what the year has been. And I happen to know that the figures are up a bit from what they have.
Yeah.
But there was we used to have, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 5 million members, and we're down to just a little under 3 million members in the national church. So there was a considerable drop-off. And as you said, I think a lot of reason. The quote that you gave me.
That rather fascinated me.
Yeah, the quote about this because the mainline churches are adopting a social agenda as opposed to a religious or a faith agenda, I think is probably one that's open to some interpretation. And certainly my interpretation of that is that the gospel message, the religious agenda of the church has always included a social component, and a very heavy social component. The gospel imperatives are very clear. Feed the hungry, house the homeless, clothe the naked, visit the poor, visit those in prison. I mean, those are not things that the modern church has invented. However, I do think the church in its modern incarnation has emphasized those in perhaps a new way, especially under the umbrella realm of peace and justice ministry. What can we do to be out there striving to have peace and justice be something that is not just a religious imperative, because there's, as you are again probably well aware, so much angst and strife in our world that there seems to be two ways to handle it: negotiation, peace, or war. And certainly as members of a faith community, we're not going to advocate violence in any way. So I think that the quote, the social agenda versus the agenda of faith would probably need to be fleshed out in individual situations. I think I can see that priest's point of view. I understand what he or she may be saying when they say that. If a particular parish or a particular denomination bends or puts too much emphasis on any one aspect of ministry, they tend to get top-heavy. And of course, one of the things that Episcopalians are famous for is kind of our three-legged stool of doing theology. You know, Scripture, reason, and tradition. And you put too much weight on any one of those legs, and the stool's going to topple over. And so we try to achieve a median balance in the things that we do, but particularly, it depends on the congregation, depends on the parish family. You're always going to have parish families where there is a tradition, and certainly Christ Church is one of those parish families where there has been a recent tradition of social justice ministry being very important, peace and justice ministry being very important as well. So it is a thinker. That was a thinker question, that's for sure.
Would you agree with the person who said not too long ago to me that the human condition, unfortunately, is getting more so?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Has Oberlin changed much in the 6 years? Have you seen anything very much there?
I think Oberlin has changed in that there appears to be, and I believe that this was happening before the events of September 11th, but I think September 11th has kind of made us a little more cohesive. One of the things that I really feel in my work with the colleagues, ministerial colleagues in town, is that there really seems to be an authentic effort to kind of reach across racial lines in a way that certainly Oberlin has some history of, but one wonders whether or not we've rested on those laurels from our past history for a long time. As you know, in the work for my doctoral dissertation, one of the things I had to do was kind of a snapshot of Oberlin in terms of its demographics, and I found some absolutely fascinating information out working with the public library and the Oberlin City Council, and some material that I had gotten, I think from you, as a matter of fact, when you were on City Council, and that was that there are some pretty clear geographical lines in Oberlin that run north and south, east and west, and those lines are somewhat natural, somewhat man-made. Route 58 is the north-south quadrant, and Plum Creek is the east-west quadrant. And if you look at a topographical map of Oberlin, we have to do some kind of repenting and admitting that as a village, as a city, there are parts of town that are different from other parts of town, even though it's small. For example, the southeast quadrant of the city is an area of town which historically was known as Little Africa, and is predominantly a place where people of color live and move and have their being. And the place in the northeast quadrant of town is the place where what I would classify the people who are working class, if there is such a thing still. I think we're all working class. But people with families tend to live in that part of town. The northwest quadrant of town seems to be the college, and that's a younger demographic than some areas, but you have the newer housing developments that are out in that area as well. And the southwest quadrant of town is a pleasant mix, actually. It's really kind of a little microcosm of the rest of Oberlin.
Well, you and I live there.
That's right, and we're also, and the church is also there, which is really kind of unusual. So I think, has Oberlin changed? I don't think Oberlin has changed for a long time. What I've seen with the recent creation of some committees in town is an effort for us to visit again, and visit with intentionality, the issue of racial justice in town, and are we living into what we say we believe? And I think that's going to take us some time, but I also think it's going to take some leadership, and I've been very impressed so far with the leadership that we have in town working in that direction. So
you may be interested, you may have heard this, at the time Christ Church was proposed and then began to actually be present. There was much unhappiness in the First Church congregation about it, and the one consolation was that at least the church was on the wrong side of the creek. And I've always loved that.
I'm also happy that our friends at First Church warmed up to us right away, because, as you know, right after that, the Bishop of Ohio came to pay an Episcopal visit to this new fledgling congregation, and that service was held at First Church. Yeah. They opened their doors.
I believe the actual consecration was there. And
because the church wasn't finished.
Ready.
Yeah.
And so
that's right.
That was true ecumenicalism.
That's right.
At an early time.
That's right.
Do you see the role of the clergy in Oberlin and at large, particularly Episcopal clergy, changing much since you've been a priest?
Yes, I have. I do think that in the last 50 years in the Episcopal Church, and this may or may not apply to other mainline denominations as well, but I do think there's been a change in our understanding of leadership per se, and there has been a kind of a rich growth of leadership among the laity. In the early prayer book, let's say the prayer book before the one that I mentioned earlier, in the 1928 prayer book, on a Sunday morning when a congregation would come into church, depending on what the particular service was, whether it was a morning prayer service or a Holy Communion service, the priest did it all. The priest did everything. And the congregation sat in the pew and responded. And now there is then cultivated a wonderful sense of lay leadership, that the clergy person is not the only person to be in leadership, even on Sunday morning. And I think that as parish communities have kind of grown into an understanding of what ordination is, or what the ministry of all believers is through baptism, that's influenced us greatly within the last 50 years. That's also part of the dissertation that I did on the history of the catechumenate in the last 50 years, how we attract people into the life of the Christian community and how we prepare them for that life.
I have a feeling that you had fun with that dissertation.
I did.
I can tell that. Well, we're getting near the end of this, believe it or not.
I don't believe it.
Time goes fast when you're having a good
Mm-hmm.
time, doesn't it? I think you sort of touched on this, challenges for the Episcopal Church generally, and Christ Church.
Challenges we have before us in the Episcopal Church, a wonderful vision that was voted in by the last General Convention meeting out in Denver in the year 2000. It's called the 2020 Vision. And it is clearly a clarion call to the church to increase membership. 2020 means double the size of the Episcopal Church by the year 2020. Now, here we are almost practically to the year 2003, and how have we started on that process? It's hard to say. Usually we have wonderful visions, and getting them up and going take a little bit more time, but that membership and being authentic places of spirituality and social justice ministry, I think, are the two places that we're going to need to kind of give some attention in future years.
Let me ask you this. Would you recommend the priesthood to students today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, again, on a national church level, there's an imperative for us to attract younger people to the priesthood. We have about roughly 10,000 clergy in the Episcopal Church, Richard, and of that 10,000, there are only 300 who are under the age of 39. Now, you do the math in terms of people getting ready for retirement. That tells you there's going to be a real shortage of.
Is this true in the ministry generally?
I don't know.
In the priesthood of the Catholic Church, for example, or
I believe our sisters and brothers in the Catholic Church probably have other issues around, but they are also having challenge trying to attract young men into the priesthood. Yeah.
I just wondered if it was sort of a general phenomenon.
Yeah. I really only can speak with certainty about the Episcopal Church, because I know I was interviewed just before I turned 40. I was interviewed by some people in the National Church about what it was like to be a clergy person under the age of 39. And
ask me in the next 3 days.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, that is wonderful. Well, let me ask you this finally. Do you have any final comments?
Any final comments?
This is your great moment.
It is my great moment. Well, it's just been a joy to finally be a guest on your show. I'm really honored to be on your 70th.
The 70th one. I can't believe that we've been able to do that long.
Yeah.
But we want you to remember this occasion, so we present you with this Conversations with Oberlin mug.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
that's fabulous.
And it sort of fits the decor of what you're wearing today. Well, remarkable. Thank you so much, Father. We appreciate it so very much.
Thank you very much.
And we thank you very much for being with us this evening. And hope you will tune in on our next broadcast next month. Until then, this is Richard Lothrop saying thank you very much and good evening.